So welcome everyone to today's session, which is largely around Master the Digital SAT, looking at your complete path to success within this whole aspect of SAT itself. And we'll be sharing you our plan as we always do so, and various resources. Now, getting on with the presentation, let me first run you through with our session roadmap for the day for today, where we'll start across with understanding what the digital SAT framework is. We will be looking across at the scoring, the various sections that there are there, the math section, the English section, and then the importance of SAT, how it is still an extremely important entrance exam in today's scenario of 2025, 2026 as well. And then we would want to move across to an overall plan. What are the steps that are required to achieve your targeted SAT score? What should a grade 10 student, a grade 11 student be largely thinking across today? And then, we'll move across to our approach and then conclude the session in terms of our resources. Just in terms of, again, setting out the rules that please do keep your cameras off and mics on mute. Any questions that you do have, you could put them across to Sarita in terms of any technical difficulties, and the questions I'll be taking right at the end of the presentation today. So at that point, I'll be just answering all of your questions. We'll maintain the complete focus on this flow of the webinar. Before we move on to the topic of SAT, let me just run you through with Let's Unbound. Let's Unbound as an organization began with a focus on skill building, empowering elementary and middle school students with STEM life skills and mentorship. As these students then graduated into high school, they started seeking for college admissions guidance. And that's where we listened. We evolved our services to seamlessly integrate the storytelling applications into our already well established mentoring programs. Now, by combining personalized learning, skill development, and strategic admission support, we guide students right from their early academic years to top global university admits. We have impacted more than 4,000 students across 25 countries and have delivered more than 125,000 hours of mentoring. Our commitment to excellence has earned us a 4.9 over a 5 global rating. We are proud to have powered with organizations as Harvard Students Agencies, Arizona State University Prep Digital. So at Let's Unbound, we don't just prepare students for applications or admissions, we prepare them for their life within undergraduations and beyond. The founders within the organization, Amol on your left, who is a serial entrepreneur, he's an education visionary. He's got experiences with Tata and Exceed, which is India's largest edtech platform. Amol has helped scale impactful educational solutions across 2,000 schools in 6 countries, impacting more than 250,000 students. On your right, you have Nishant. Nishant is, as we call, the professor at the organization. He's largely a mentor, he's an educator, he's the brains behind many of the learning pathways that we'll also be sharing today in terms of SAT. With 14 plus years of experience across academia, industry, he has counseled more than 1,000 students and has designed curriculum solutions from K-12 to executive MBA programs. Now, a quick introduction about myself, the third co-founder within the organization. So, I have spent my last decade within investments and edtech. I have worked with organizations as Jaguar Land Rover, Citibank, Standard Charter, and within education consultancy with Crimson and Added Education, both of them being international players looking at admissions abroad. So that's my overall experience run thus far. Now we'll move on to the topic at hand, which is firstly about understanding today, understanding why are we actually even here today? Because really the core of the matter is that SAT still does matter. Even in today's complete test optional world, a real good, strong SAT score can be the differentiation maker. It can unlock scholarships. It can help you stand out in competitive applications and show colleges that you're really, really ready for that academic rigor. The SAT, originally known as the Scholastic Aptitude Test, was first introduced in 1926. Over the years, it has evolved to better assess students' critical thinking, problem-solving skills. Today, the SAT remains a widely used college admissions test, primarily for the USA, but also for universities worldwide. The College Board, the organization behind SAT, which is a not-for-profit organization, founded in the 1900s, administers SAT. Its mission is to expand access to higher education by providing all of these various standardized assessments and resources for students. Other programs that a lot of you guys may be aware from College Board, within the umbrella of SAT is the PSAT, and along with that, you do also have advanced placements, which are basically college level courses and exams that help students earn, I would say, a global result or a global ranking to your various subjects that you may have gone ahead and selected. For example, in the model of CBSE or I would say even ICSC. So that's overall the College Board, and in terms of what SAT is as an examination, which plays an extremely crucial role even in today's college admissions, which really offers students an opportunity to demonstrate their academic strengths. And specifically for students who've joined me across from India on a CBSE board, on an ICSC board, they really do go ahead and give you an standardized, I say, diagnosis over your current academic results. And these are the few things I would, like to push across in terms of introducing SAT itself. Now, once we have looked at, what SAT is, what is the College Board, now we want to see at the digital SAT framework, which is now the new way in which SAT is being conducted. The digital SAT has been redesigned to make test taking experience way much more streamlined, secure, and focused on skills that really truly matter for college and beyond. And also moving ahead in terms of the whole digitalization of education, which has been a factor that has been happening for the last decade plus. Now the test lasts for 2 hours and 14 minutes, which is shorter than the previous paper-based version. It still does contain the same two sections, the maths, which is again covering, topics within algebra, topics within advanced mathematics, and, data analysis. Evidence-based reading and writing, or how we call the English section, still would be assessing your comprehension, the grammar, the reasoning, and your analytical skills. The test is now, as I've said, on a digital format. It's now totally administered online, which makes it more efficient, makes it much more accessible, and overall, as the organization does say, it does increase a lot of the security behind the test itself. So though that's again, within how SAT is still typically looking across, one of the most important changes in digital SAT is also the shift away from memorization and towards really real world applications of knowledge. So instead of just testing how well students would remember formulas or grammar rules, the SAT now evaluates how well you can really apply these concepts in different contexts, whether in problem solving, reading comprehension, or your logical reasoning. Another very important change that has now become that the test has become adaptive, meaning the difficulty of questions will adjust based on the students' performances. Now, what does that typically mean? We'll be using the next slide to really explain you how does the SAT scoring work, because that's a very core concept within the adaptive aspect of SAT. So what does it really mean that SAT has gone adaptive? Now, on the right side of your screen, you can see this whole description where you can see there's this one singular stage one. Just sorry, 1 second. Right. So if you can see on the right side of your screen, there is this whole stage one. Stage one is where everyone would be starting. This would include a mix of easy, medium, and hard questions. Now, however, based on the performance of stage one, you would be then placed in one of the two easier stage two option or the harder stage two option. So the stage two option is where you would see the whole adaptiveness coming in. So if you perform well in stage one, you would then move on to harder stage two, which contains mostly medium to hard questions. Now, if you perform weaker in stage one, you move into the easier stage two, which contains the easy to medium question. And that's the whole adaptive aspect within SAT. So this means your performance in the first stage would really determine your overall scoring range. Now, students who would be placed, let's say, in the harder stage two can achieve the highest possible score up to 800 per section. Now, students who get placed into easier stage two will have a lower maximum possible score, capped around 600 per section. So if you're getting into both of your maths and English sections, and both of them, you're going to the easier stage two, the maximum SAT score that you'll be largely looking across at is 1200. But if you manage to, get into your harder stage two, so, you're looking at a SAT score easily anywhere between 1400 to 1600. That's the area where your top 20, and I won't even say top 20, I'll say really your top 50 colleges are looking at, because the moment you're moving into your top 20, you're really talking about a SAT score which is 1500 plus. Now, why does the SAT use this adaptive testing? This adaptive system has really helped create a much more accurate and personalized assessment while also making the test shorter and more efficient. Now, since students only answer questions which is much more suited to their skill level, the test feels much more tailored and avoids unnecessary repetition of, let's say, either very easy questions for all those students who need to be placed into harder stage two, or extremely difficult question where at maximum the admission officer can really understand what you do not know rather than what you know. Whereas you're not really answering questions by that stage. They're questions that are going way above your skill level, and the representation of your current grade was not really put across. So this adaptive scoring has allowed even that aspect to come through. That way does your current maths and English scoring really put you across? Now, the key takeaways that you need to really think about in terms of the SAT scoring is that your performance is really key to stage one. So that would really determine stage two and eventually go on to determine which range are you going to be scoring at. So stage one across the two sections are extremely important for you if you're looking at those 1500, 1600 kind of SAT scores. Stage two difficulty affects your final score range, which is, the whole continuity of in terms of making stage one that critical part. And, again, SAT still just remains out of 1600, 800 for your math section, 800 for your reading and writing. And one of those things that I do suggest to students, especially students which are looking at STEM degrees, and I'm sure a lot of students today who have joined me across are looking at STEM degrees, make sure that you're getting as close as to 800 in your math section, and preferably get the full Monty of 800. That allows you a really good kind of, I would say, a cushioning within the reading and writing section, where you could score anywhere between 700 to 750 and still cross the 1500 benchmark. So make sure that you're trying to get as better within your math skill and try to outscore in that area. Now, now moving across, after understanding what does a digital SAT mean, let's do a little bit of in-depth number crunching as well, right? Let's just see what are the various sections, what are the various questions in it. So as I've told you, the SAT is scored out of 1600. It has those two main sections, math scored out of 800, English scored out of 800. Remember the whole part that I told you, each section now consists two stages, where stage one will directly affect your range score along with range two, stage two. Now, how many questions do you need to get right? Because I think that's one question that everyone would be getting. Because if you see on your screen, the number of questions that you are seeing, it's 54, 44, total 98 questions. But the scoring is between 200 to 800, 1600. So there is definitely a scale that is used to change across, your, let's say, your number of right questions to the scale score between 200 to 800 per score. So that's what we need to understand. So how many questions you really need to get right? So in terms of now, let's try to break the number of sections, questions into hours itself. So if you look into the reading and writing section, which is basically to say 64 minutes for 54 questions. That's approximately 1.2 minutes, 72 seconds per question. When you look in terms of maths, that's 70 minutes for 44 questions. That's approximately 1.6 minutes, which is 96 seconds per question. So if you think about it, if you take too long for any single difficult question, you're really running out time for your easier ones, which may overall have the same kind of marking that you need to get through. So skipping and returning to a difficult question can be the really smart strategy that you need to take. And that makes that online practices before you take the real SAT very, very crucial. So you're very in hand in terms of understanding how to flag and how to come back. Now coming to the important question. So we've just broken down how much time do you have to get a question right. So now the question is, how can you maximize your score? So if you answer anyway, let's say 40 to 44 questions correctly, you are likely to land up within that range of 750 to 780. Right. So do try to make sure that you're anywhere between 40 to 44. If you get 44, so you have done that 800 kind of a SAT score. Now, if you get, let's say, 48 questions out of your 54 in the reading and writing questions, right, you can really expect a SAT score anywhere between 730, 740, moving up to that 780, 800 range, as close you get to 54, the more assured are you of getting that 800 kind of a result. So even if you miss out, if you look at this, if even if you miss out a few hard questions, but maintaining your accuracy on the medium difficulty questions, making sure that you have at least tried to attempt as many as of those 44. So even if you're landing around, let's say around with a 42 kind of a score, you are very close to a 780, 800. So make sure that you're attempting as many as questions possible. That is the kind of understanding. Minimum amount that you need to get correct is 40 within maths, 48 within English section. So within SAT, it's not about getting every single question right. It's really about the strategic use of accuracy and time management. So prioritize the easier to medium question difficulty questions quicker, and that will really ensure your higher raw score. Keep an eye on the clock, which goes unsaid with almost any entrance exam, which is time. And that's how, I mean, I would give you an overall look in terms of if you're asking me how do you get into the zone of 600 to 800, or let's say 700 to 800 across the two sections. Now, once we have looked at, let's say the at SAT from an overall view of maths and English, let's go a little bit deeper now. I would like to now show you what does it really take to get 42 or 43 questions correct of those 44 within the math. So where are those 44 questions placed is largely what we'll be discussing across in the next two slides. So algebra, as you'd see, that is one of the most important sections, be it your linear equations, your linear functions, the systems of two linears. All of these various topics are extremely important. This domain covers approximately one third of your total questions. Mastering linear equations and functions is going to be very essential for your high score. And overall, you could see 35%, as I've just said, is the contribution to the exam, and it's got 13 to 15 questions that you could expect. Moving on to geometry and trigonometry. So this is another domain that would be taking one third of the math section, and the focus on would be on linear inequalities, equivalent expressions, nonlinear expressions, system of equations, trigonometry. So covering all of these various topics are going to be extremely important. Many students find trigonometry and nonlinear equations challenging. So dedicating, let's say, extra time to these two specific sections or any section, dependent on how you have been preparing maths for all of these years, is going to be really handful and it's going to be really beneficial for you to get that right kind of an 800. So these two topics on your screen, extremely important and crucial in terms of getting the right kind of a score. Moving on to advanced maths, which is the next 15% that comes across with ratios and rates, one variable, two variable data analysis, probability, statistics, inference from data. All of these various aspects then add up the third component, along with problem solving and data analysis, where you'll be looking at area, volume calculations, lines, angles, triangles, right triangle trigonometry. So all of these various will be topics will be important. They would be coming into 5 to 7 questions, giving another 15%. So overall key takeaways that I'll give you, focusing on algebra, geometry, and trigonometry, these three aspects really account for 70% of the math section. Then focusing across in terms of advanced maths, problem solving contribute to the next 30. Time management is going to be extremely important here. Not just time management within the exams of saying, you've got 70 minutes for 44 questions, but also time management in terms of preparing for all of these four sections in the right way. Now, moving on to the next section, the English one. These are the four content domains that are also there within this section. 28% comes across to your craft and structure. The section focuses on how words, sentences, passages are structured, how meaning is conveyed. Moving on to information and ideas, which is the next 26%, approximately 12 to 14 questions. And then moving the third and the fourth one being standard English conventions, the section evaluates your grammar, your mechanics, testing your ability to write clearly and correctly. It focuses on, let's say, areas as boundaries, understanding punctuations, sentence fragments, and run-on sentences, along with looking at form, structure, and sense. Lastly, you've also got the expression of ideas, which takes 40 of the English section, right, again there from 8 to 12 questions. Right. Now, the strategic takeaways that I'll give across to this part would be craft, structure, information, and ideas. would make more than 50% of the English part. So focus on reading comprehension and textual analysis. Grammar rules, punctuations contribute approximately more than 25%. So a strong grasp of English conventions can really help you quick boost your scores. Again, as within the math section, time management again is the key. 64 minutes for your 54 questions, which again is only just 1.2 minutes per question. You really need to pick up that speed. Make sure that you're answering the easier to medium ones first and then moving across to your difficult ones. So that prioritizing of questions is extremely important when you're looking in the whole SAT aspect. Now we'll move on to the last part of the first of understanding SAT, which is now bringing us to the topic of, once we've understood that who conducts SAT, what are the different two sections in SAT, what's the best way of getting the right kind of scores within the maths and English sections, which are the topics that you need to focus across, and also giving you the focus in terms of the percentages across everything. So once you've looked across in all of that part, it also is important to give you our perspective in terms of giving the explanation why is it still important to be giving this SAT. Now, so over the past, I would say going into this topic over the few years, many schools and universities adopted that test optional policy, which the pandemic had really speeded up. So students were allowed to apply without a SAT score, without an ACT score. And this trend really started from the state of California, where there was a legislation passed and said universities and colleges were encouraged to move on to SAT optional or SAT blind, really citing out the difficulty that students had during those years had faced in terms of coming and giving an exam in a group methodology. So from that point onwards, we did see a lot of colleges move away from SAT. But however, over the last 2 to 3 admission cycle, we are seeing this whole trend now shifting. We are now seeing a lot of several top universities reinstitute the whole SAT requirements. So colleges that have reinstituted your SAT and ACT requirements, you've got Dartmouth that has done that. Harvard University, Purdue has done it, Brown, Yale, and very interestingly, Caltech has also done it, which is basically California Institute of Technology. So one of those first even universities within the state of California have announced that SAT and ACT scores will once again be required for applicants. So these universities are arguing that a standardized test scores really provides a valuable metric to assess students fairly, especially in the context of, let's say, grade inflations, and also from the context of international students applying. A SAT score really does give a global benchmark reflection of a student's preparedness for undergraduate education. Now, there are also universities that are within the test optional bracket. So at the same time, many schools really do continue to maintain that test optional policy as well, meaning the SAT scores are not required, but can be submitted to strengthen your application. So universities that are within the test optional include places as Columbia, Princeton, Cornell, Stanford, UPenn, University of Chicago. So this means that while SAT has scores are not really mandatory at any of these institutes, a high SAT score can really move your application forward, can really help you stand out, can give you global benchmarking if you're on CBSE or ICSE, and really makes your application that much more competitive. In the test optional scenario, students who submit SAT scores can really stand out. And in that part, what I always do add on to say that even in the test optional scenarios, it is better to have a SAT score rather than not having one. So in these two names of colleges that I've said, your Columbias, your Princetons, or your Harvards or Dartmouths, in terms where it's important, if you got any of these colleges or any of these names on your aspiration, so more often than not, you will be giving a SAT score. So having all of this information that I just gave you about SAT is extremely important. So if you're applying to the schools that have reinstated those SAT things, the score then just becomes a mandatory part of your application. So make sure that you're understanding the kind of colleges that you're trying to apply for, understand their requirements very specifically. So by the time that you're applying, you do have the prerequisites in your hand. Now, furthering the whole topic of importance of SAT, it's also important for students to understand what kind of SAT score is enough, what kind of SAT score is required for the university that you're going. So the data on the slide that you can see presents percentile scores from top universities. And this one that I'm showing you is Harvard University. The next slide that I'll take you in would be Texas A&M. And what you see on your screen is taken straight from the common data set, which is published annually. It's also called the CDS document. So online, you could, search with either of these two terms. These numbers and percentiles really help you understand where a student score needs to stand compared to the other applicants. So in terms of, if you see understanding firstly the SAT percentiles themselves, the 25th percentile, the first column, what should it mean? Don't go into the numbers. Just we first understanding what does the 25th percentile actually mean. It represents those students who scored lower than 75% of the admitted applicants. 50 percentile represents the median score. So half of the admits scored above, half of the admits scored below. The 75th percentile represents the highest scores. So students in the range are in the top 25% of the admitted applicant pool. So for example, now looking into the numbers, the 25th percentile score at SAT is 740 for your English and 760 for maths. Within 50 percentile, it jumps up to 760 to 790. Within the 75th percentile, meaning the top 25% of the admitted applicants, it is between 780 to 800. So that is where you need to be if you're really going through the normal admission cycle of your academics. That's where you need to be looking at. Do remember your 25th and your percentile scores. All of these are largely your sports admits. So if you're looking out for a top admission in terms for your academic way, this is the range that you need to be at. 800 at maths, 780 within your English section. And you remember I had spoken to all of those kids saying if you're looking at a STEM application, then you need to get an 800 out of 800 within your math section if you're looking for these top universities. Now, moving on to the next example, the Texas A&M, and this is just to give you a bit more flavor in terms of understanding the overall umbrella of universities. So this is, I would say, a university that would be there within rank 50 to 60, and Harvard that I just shown you is the top five of those of America. So if you see in that perspective, the 25th percentile composite score within Texas A&M is 1160. The 75th percentile is 1380. So meaning that students who need to score in the mid to high 1300s if you really need to be competitive for this application. So what does this all overall mean? So at Harvard, nearly 92% of the students score between 700 to 800 in SAT for their evidence-based reading and writing, and 95% of the students score between 700 to 800 in mathematics. That's the area where you want to be if you're looking at a short kind of an admission. Overall, if you look at all the Ivy Leagues, all of your top 20, top 30 institutes, it is 1500 plus kind of a SAT score, which will really take you through, right? And, institutes where you're coming down to something as 50 and below, that's when you're looking below 1400 and you'd be looking at 1300 or let's say 1380 kind of a score. Any institute within the top 50 ranking, you're seeing a SAT score above 1400. So do remember getting into hard stage two across the two sections is extremely important. And just the last thing that I was just talking about, giving you a rough understanding of how those SAT scores are distributed. So I just said that if you're looking at a top 50 college, you need to look across 1400 kind of a score. Your top 40, your top 30, then the top 20 and 10, you can see how closer you keep on getting to that 1600 kind of a score. And if you're looking at the top 10, you're looking at 1550 plus. Do also remember this one fact while I'm closing off the aspect in terms of the SAT scoring. You do get 3 attempts minimum. You can even do more attempts than three, but you do definitely have 3 attempts in which you can, super score. They'll take the best of your English, they'll take the best of your maths, merge them together, and then give you your overall SAT score. So that's the final aspect in terms of giving you your score guidelines. Now, expanding our presentation and giving a bit of an understanding in terms of what is the India scope as well. So these are various institutes that have also started using SAT within India itself. You've got Ashoka, you've got Claim, you've got Amity, Noida, you've got Indian School of Business and Finance, Ahmedabad University, Prakasa, Kriya. So all really good institutes when it comes to conducting and using SAT as an admission aspect. Good places that you could also be looking across to if you're not planning to go to America for that undergraduation, but would still like to experience, let's say, liberal art education here in India, something very close to home. Now, moving on to this whole aspect of giving you your plan. So this is the other very important part for the students who have joined us across. How do you go closer and build the right kind of SAT score per se? So one of the first things that you need to do is set your target. So before you start studying, you need to have a clear goal in mind. You need to list down, let's say, potential schools, make a list of 20, 30 colleges that you might be applying for. Find their 75th percentile, right? That's when you'll understand which is that score that you need to be in. That's the 25 percentage of the admitted students had scored across at. Then identify any special requirements. So, for example, what I mean by special requirements, Georgetown University may require to submit all of their SAT scores, right? There are other different universities that have other peculiar requirements as well. They may just want their top two, or your results, or your top three results as well. So just know the university that you're applying to, what are their requirements, so you are fulfilling them in the correct way. Using these three aspects, you then set your target score. Moving on to the next point, you then assess your current ability. The best way to do it is take SAT diagnostic, take SAT practice tests as well using the college admissions Blue Book app. It really does help you simulate the real test conditions. Within this point, make sure to record your scores consistently. Identify the gaps that are really bothering you in terms of getting that 800 kind of a preparation. And then from that point onwards, it's identifying the gap, making sure that you're covering those topics, giving another SAT attempt, recording that score, seeing which is the further changes that you need to do, and keep on repeating the cycle till you do not, get as close as possible to that 1600, which is now that third point, which is creating that prep schedule. Once you've understood the gap, you then are understanding your study time. You should schedule your practice tests. Make sure that you have put this advance in a month, that you would be giving a test 4 days, 5 days from a gap between one another. And within those 5 days, you're covering up all of those topics where you're feeling is letting you down in that right kind of a grade, which takes us to that track the progress aspect, which is writing down your study dates. It is monitoring your progress, and then refining your schedule as well to get you the right kind of grades, right? Try to also seek admissions additional support, right? Try to go out there various institutes and places which is helping students to understand how to best answer SAT. It is a time, I mean, it's also a very time taking exam, and also given you in a very short while. A lot of mentors do say that SAT is not a very difficult exam if you have 3 hours to answer. So the whole aspect behind SAT, even though it sounds like a long examination, but it will always feel too short, too less of time while you sit and give it. So using any kind of mentoring will really help you across in preparing for this examination. One of the other most important, then moving on to the checkpoints that I'll say for students that are currently in grade 10. So, giving your first attempt would be next year, I think somewhere around November of 2026. Now, why am I really putting this to November of 2026? So your kids would have just started with your 10th, and I think at this stage there are some schools that close the math syllabus by now. There's some that may be closing it by somewhere the start of January. But the whole logic of pushing the first SAT attempt for a student in grade 10 till November of 26 is wait for your maths syllabus to conclude. The moment it is concluded, you can conduct your diagnostic. You can also take this exam a little bit earlier if you feel much more confident around August or September, making your second attempt then in November. But in terms of saying if you want to follow even on its late scale, your first attempt can be delayed till the November of 2026. Your second attempt then should be coming across with January of 2027. And the latest attempt that you can put across in terms of SAT would be in March, which should be then your third attempt. And post that, you should be now focusing across on your other aspects of the examination. Right. Now, moving across to the students who are, in the examination year. So within this point, what I'd say Your second SAT attempt should be coming in Jan of 2026, and then the later one should be SAT attempt in the March of 2026 and that way. Now, moving into our approach, the digital SAT, right? So the roadmap that you could be looking across in this is in terms of diagnostics. That's where we start off. We're helping every student prepare. And we then move after understanding the gaps in terms of your English within your maths. And I'll also be showing you how an overall diagnostic test result looks like. Once we do see that, we then move into the personalized study plan, and then we do help or we do give all of those sessions on a one-on-one basis. We do conduct a lot of exclusive strategy sessions as well to understand your specific weaknesses and strength areas in preparing for getting you the right kind of a score. Lastly, we will help you do at least 2021 different mocks where your actual SAT attempt may just look like that 22nd mock. Going through all of those sections, going through the whole exam, it's very important and doing it at least 20 times. So you're very accustomed to all of the tools that are part of the SAT, digital SAT in today's time. Now, the three very important pillars that we really talk about in terms of accuracy, speed, exam strategy, and stamina, these are the three most important things that you need to get through with. When it comes to accuracy and speed, the real thing that helps you get through is the practice part. So that is again to say, do as many as mocks as possible. So when you're in the exam, you have the stamina to go through and you have an overall strategy to take it through. Now, the diagnostic test summary that I said, I'll just be showing you. So anyone who takes a diagnostic test with us, I'll be giving the link at the end of the session as well. Here you can see the how your total exam is broken down into the two sections, how you've given the results in terms of correct, incorrect, and how many questions did you skip, along with the time taken to have come across to either of those results, correct, incorrect, or skipped. And across the two sections, this is how it overall looks like. So this is the English section, giving you an overall understanding in terms of your graph, structure, words in context, text structure and purpose, information and ideas, central ideas, how well you have done. All of your greens mean the correct ones, the red are the wrong ones. Now, moving on to your math section. So this is how a typical diagnostic result would look like. Now, giving you a look into why use the digital sat lab that we do have. One of those things that I'd really put across is the personalized attention, the three-tiered preparation, and overall, I'll say all-in-one prep will help you not just within SAT, within APs, within your overall admissions guidance, and making this SAT aspect just one part of your admission cycle. Now, moving on to the digital stat lab in terms of how it looks in terms of hours. So we do give you 90 hours of foundational prep, which is divided 45 hours of contact hours and 45 hours of self-learning, along with 60 hours of mock tests, which are 20 different mock tests that you could attempt. These are the other programs that we do offer along with SAT. So this is the part that I'm saying all in one learning. We help students right from their elementary to middle to high school, helping them in every aspect around admissions. Now, these are the various success stories that we could share across in terms of SAT. These are the scores that the students have gotten: 1510, 1580, 1560. Students that have currently this year just given SAT and have gotten the results in their August 23rd cycle. Right. This is just another result of a kid who got a 1560, 800 again, as I've been saying, that required score in terms of mathematics. Right. Now we're just moving on just to show you a few success journeys, not just success SAT scores. A student of ours who had just gone into Dartmouth last year, and he had an overall SAT score of 1550, did well within Oxford, the essay competition, a national level basketball player, founded an NGO, solo singer, performed at charity event. So that was that overall application that ran him through with the successful admit. Now, lastly, with our presentation today, just leaving you with the various topics of presentations that we consistently do every weekend. We do gather and we do have this discussion in terms of admissions. So all of the people who had joined us last week, you would have heard us talk a lot about in terms of the UCAS application. This week we were on SAT. Next weekend, we are going to be looking across at various passion projects that one could be using if you're looking at an admission abroad. So do join us again next week as well for understanding those passion projects, a very important part of the activity list. Now, moving across, apart from the platform of these webinars and presentations that we do, you could also access a lot of admission related information using this QR code. It will take you to our newsletters, and we explore various different topics around admissions within UK, within USA, globally as well on admissions. Along with that, we do also have these two other platforms, podcasts and WhatsApp community, in which we again use them to share as much as information possible on admissions abroad. Lastly, students who are interested in doing a SAT diagnostic with us, you could use the QR code on your screen now to access it, and then we'll be able to give you a current standing of your SAT result. Now, this is the last slide of my presentation, the Dream College. If you're looking at a good application within US and the UK, and you want to understand something, even within specific SAT, you could use the QR code on your screen now, and a representative would connect with you and would be able to solve your queries. Right now, we are done with the presentation. I'll just be using the chat section to look at your score, to look at any questions that you guys would be having. Right, so I think the first question, and when does this end? I think momentarily would be the most apt answer to that now. But yes, anything admission require related, what is the Ross acceptancy score? So if you're looking, I mean, if you're looking at the score, so they don't work in terms of how UCAS work. So UCAS have these tariff scores, and there is a minimum SAT score you need to achieve. What we need to do in terms of the Ross applications, you can go into the last year's CDS doc, and we can see which is the 75th percentile. If I'm not wrong, the 75th percentile overall composite score is 1500 plus. Right. Now, are there any other questions that you would like me to take across? I'm just looking at the chat section. Otherwise, we will just conclude for today. What CBSC? I guess you guys, so that's someone joining us across from, I guess, states. CBSC is just basically a school board in India. It's the central government school board. It's something as IB or A levels, or how you'd also know state boards across India as well. ICSC is another kind of example. So it is just the board that conducts the grade 12 exam in India. Right. So are there any other questions? There is no connection between Ross and CBSE apart from the part that you'd be connecting your scores. But I think you heard CBSE instead of CDS. What I had said at that time was you have to see the CDS score for Ross. That's fine. You have to see the CDS score for Ross, which in my remembrance, 75 percentile. Composite score is above 1500. Right. But looking at all of these top admissions, you have to see 1500 plus as a rough guidance. Which class should we start preparing for SAT? As soon as your grade 10 syllabus is completed, math syllabus specifically, you start preparing, from that SAT perspective. 6 months before the first exam is more than enough. So I would rather think that all of the kids that are today in 10th, by the time that you hit Jan, all of your syllabuses would be completed. The earliest you should really attempt this shouldn't be before August or September. All of the kids that are in 10th now. So by the time it's August, September next year, you'll be in 11th. Right. And that's an answer. When you do your first SAT attempt, largely in 11th, the start of 11th, largely. Sure. So we're just concluding off the session for today. Thank you.